episode. So first of all, many of you, like me, grew up toting this Book of Mormon to church, right? This angel Moroni has been the symbol of our church for my entire life. And so I want to start out talking about the angel Moroni. That's part of why I put this episode here, because it talks about the Salt Lake Temple still, because I had included this angel Moroni section at the end of my Salt Lake Temple section, but it just was too much. So I decided to make it its own episode with some of the other things that I found that I think are applicable. So although the Salt Lake Temple was the fourth temple completed, it was the first temple to have an angel Moroni. It's so interesting because as our narrative has shifted over time with different leadership styles and different things that they were trying to accomplish, our awareness, like I think I always thought that an angel Moroni was just a necessary part of a temple. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and angel Moronis and temples went together. I had no idea because I grew up in Salt Lake. I didn't learn until much later that we had the St. George Temple and the Manti Temple and the Logan Temple that didn't have angel Moroni on them. Like, what's that about? How weird. Are they broken? I just assumed that that's how it had to be. So anyway, that's why I want to talk about it, because I find it so fascinating how history gets handed down and how we sort of kind of cling on to a historical practice from a certain period of time and assume there's something eternally right about that and that it's always correct. And that, like, it reminds me of the Amish, right? Somehow that, what was it, a 1600s practice and style of dress and technology in Germany all of a sudden became like, this is the way and you have to do it this way. And it's so interesting because the people before didn't do it that way, but right. So it's kind of like how we can get trapped in one certain timeline. And that seems to be a little bit what happened with the angel Moroni. So I'm going to share all of this information because I find it to be fascinating, interesting, and kind of fun. I hope that you will enjoy this part. Then we'll get into some more heavy topics. The angel Moroni will lead us into some more serious topics. So in the 1800s, we're first going to talk about the angel Moroni on the Nauvoo Temple. Yeah, listen to what I said. That was all incorrect. We'll get there. So in the 1800s, a weather vane angel, which was usually considered to be Gabriel blowing a trumpet based on the descriptions of the temples in the book of Revelation, it was a very common building topper, especially on churches. So according to one church historian, that's just what you did. I want to show you a few examples from the time period. These are different angel building toppers, and you can see how much this was just part of the style. Those were antiques now, right? Those were original building toppers from that time period. And so the Nauvoo Temple angel weather vane actually fell perfectly in line with this trend. This shown here is William Weeks' design. And it's interesting because Joseph taught in a sermon in 1839 and he said, an angel of God never has wings. So the Nauvoo Temple angel followed that teaching and didn't have wings, which continued with all of our angel temple toppers. And so anyway, this is a really interesting story about our first angel topper, angel temple topper. That's a bit of a tongue twister, a fun one to say. So anyway, I read that the Nauvoo angel actually was sold to the Salem Evangelical Church in Cincinnati, where it stood atop their chapel for over 100 years until it was blown down in a windstorm. So that was a really interesting article to read, and I'll share it below. But yep, it's really fun to see the original Nauvoo angel temple topper design. So in Salt Lake, it was Truman Angell who designed the Salt Lake Temple. And in his initial 1853 drawings for the Salt Lake Temple, you can see a similar angel weather vane. If you zoom in on it, you can see it more clearly. And it appears that it might be wearing temple clothing, which I found really interesting. I can't be sure, but that's kind of what it looks like to me. And so you could see it blowing the trumpet, carrying a book, and it was just in keeping with the Nauvoo angel temple topper, which was just the theme of the day, right? The season of the day. So during ensuing decades, trends changed to upright angels. So you'll remember Truman Angell expected this temple to be built relatively quickly within his lifetime, but it wasn't. And so as the decades went on, they weren't using horizontal flying angels anymore at that time. So I want to show you again just another trend. here you can see the trend of angels as temple toppers, some of them blowing trumpets, some of them not, most of them with wings, because that's how angels are envisioned, other than Joseph Smith's teaching. So you can see that this was really a common trend, not at all unique to Mormonism or to our temples, and other than we don't have wings. And the trend continues. These last ones are a little bit more recent. So by the time Cyrus Dallin, who is the sculptor who created the angel Moroni, by the time he accepted the commission to sculpt the Salt Lake Temple angel, he thankfully went with the newer style. I really like the standing angels better than the floating angels. I think it was an improvement. So his life is actually a fantastic story. I loved learning about it. I won't go into it now for the sake of time, but I'll just give some quick Cliff's Notes. But you can search up Cyrus Dallin, and it's worth learning about him. I just loved that. So his parents actually met crossing the plains in 1851, and then they married, I believe, 8 years later in 1859, and settled in Springville, where Cyrus was born and raised. Cyrus was actually named for the missionary who converted his father. The missionary was Cyrus Wheelock, so that's why he was named Cyrus Dallin. But his father was excommunicated when Cyrus was still young. Apparently, from the best information I can find, it was for supporting non-Mormon political candidates. So it was a different world in early Utah, right? So he was excommunicated. So Cyrus was never baptized and never identified as a member of the church. Nevertheless, he was just a born sculptor, naturally talented. From his earliest days, he would be sculpting with clay and mud, and the neighborhood recognized his talent. And I think it was maybe his father's employer that started it up and recognized his talent, collected and donated to fund him being sent to Boston for training as a sculptor. I just love that. See, it's this stuff that just I love the good stories. That is a beautiful story. I love it. It reminds me of Alexander Hamilton being sent, was it from Jamaica? And they were like, you're too brilliant to be here. They took a collection and sent him to America. And that's similar to what happened to Cyrus Dallin. I really love that story. So anyway, he went on and trained in, I think mainly in Massachusetts. He also went to Paris and continued his training. And he was amazingly talented. So many gorgeous statues that he created, mostly in Massachusetts. So I'll just show a couple of them. There are many more, but I love this Appeal to the Great Spirit at the Boston Museum of Fine Art. I think it's just beautiful. And his best known work and sort of the trial of his life is Paul Revere at the Old North Church in Boston. He had to do many different versions of this statue, and they're all just remarkable. I love that he also returned to Springville, where he set up his studio and school and established the Springville Museum of Art, which is still there today. And he also sculpted he has many sculptures in Utah, including the Brigham Young Monument, which is an interesting one, which stands near Temple Square. And so he was the sculptor who Wilford Woodruff asked to design the angel for the temple. You remember it was Wilford Woodruff who finally got the temple finished, so he had to find a way to do the angel on top of it. Cyrus actually initially refused the commission because he was not a member of the church and he didn't believe in angels, so he didn't feel like he would be able to accurately depict one. At least that's what he said. And so President Woodruff really persisted and asked him to talk to his mother. And I love this story. Jane, his mother, who had also been a member of the church, she told her son Cyrus, every time you return home and take me in your arms, sorry, don't know why it's making me cry. I just love stories of good mothers. Every time you take me in your arms, you call me your angel mother. So she convinced him that he did believe in angels because he believed in his mother and she was an angel. So she encouraged him to seek inspiration from the scriptures. And he claimed that his inspiration for the angel he sculpted came mainly from Revelation 14 verses 6-7, which says, and I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of water. So that was his inspiration, and he created that beautiful sculpture that we have. He assumed, just like everyone else, that he was sculpting the angel Gabriel, which is what he called the angel on his drawings, until it was finished and a group of apostles came to see it. And one of them said, we should call him Moroni. And the name stuck. And so that is when the angel that always had been Gabriel became Moroni. And it was an apostle's idea. And so the only reason that we in the church associate Moroni with a trumpet is because of the angel on our temple. There's no reference anywhere in the Book of Mormon, at least that I have found, to angel Moroni having anything to do with a trumpet. And so and again, it's interesting how our history gets passed down, right? But before any Christians, because there are other Christians, there are people from other Christian churches. I consider myself to be a Christian very much. Before any of them get too gloaty, because they can be pretty hard on Mormons, I want to also point out that I can't find anything in the Bible that in any way associates Gabriel with the trumpet either. So if anyone wants to let me know where that comes from, that would be great. But I can see why Moroni is now associated with the trumpet, because it came from our temple statue, but I couldn't even find out why Gabriel came to be associated with a trumpet, but he absolutely did, as we can see in so many elements of our culture. So again, it's easy to assume that Mormonism is rather unique in our messy history, but that's not the case at all. It's no different from any other religion. It's just how humanity and human civilization work. So, okay, I have to point out, this is something that really amused me. This beautiful, iconic statue that inspired what eventually became the main symbol of Mormonism worldwide has bare shoulders. Can you see that? It killed me when I realized that the angel Moroni blowing his horn on the central, most iconic Mormon temple is actually not temple worthy because he couldn't wear garments. And so I'm so, I don't know, easily amused and probably overworked. So I honestly laughed for hours about this, that angel Moroni isn't temple worthy. And I had to call my awesome sister who's been on my channel, who is hilarious. And I called her and told her and laughed about it. And she came back with, well, Michelle, that's why he's on the outside. Sorry. I thought it was so funny. That's why he's on the outside of the temple. So anybody who's ever been to a temple wedding and had to wait outside, don't feel bad, because Angel Moroni is in the same boat and he's out there with you. So that's just how it goes. Anyway, I hope that some of you found that as amusing as I did. I think it was really fun. So just like every other trend, angel statues on buildings soon fell out of fashion. So no more were included on church buildings until 1856. So the church continued to build more temples, but again, they didn't have angel Moronis. That was just unique, limited to the Salt Lake Temple. But in 1856, which was 60 years later and 6 temples later, the Los Angeles Temple became the second temple with an angel Moroni. And this was a new design, this time with the pesky bare shoulder problem fixed. And so that was our second temple with a Moroni. And then 18 years and 6 more temples later, in 1974. If I've been saying 18, it's just because my brain has been working in the wrong century. This whole time it should be 19. I hope I've been saying that. This was 1974. DC, the DC temple got the third Moroni. So for anyone keeping track, that is 16 temples and only 3 with an angel Moroni. I have to say that this DC temple that was built in 1974, I love and laughed again that this angel Moroni has long hair. So anyone growing up in the 70s, this was before my time, but I've definitely heard the stories in my own family with my oldest brother and my dad. The biggest fights between parents and teenage sons in the 70s was over haircuts. So you can see Donnie got away with it. But the John Travolta look, long hair was what you wanted, not the short missionary haircut. And so my oldest brother did not get away with it, and he had to keep his hair short, which just killed him. He would let it grow out a little bit. There was always this battle about hair. And so I just laugh. If only my parents could have seen the newest Moroni up close. Look at his long hair in the 70s. And so that was another great amusement to me. But by the 1980s, I guess, you know what, there's a similarity with that and the Brigham Young statue at BYU campus. We always used to laugh that Brigham Young has a full beard standing right in the middle of the quad at BYU when none of the men were allowed to be anything other than clean shaven. So there are lots of stories of people complaining about being late to a test and having to hurry and shave so they'd be led into the testing center to take their final. Yeah. So anyway, lots of funny ironies like that. So that was, I actually love the DC Angel Moroni. But by the 1980s, when correlation was really in full swing and the church started to standardize its franchise, the church commissioned this, what looks to me like a fully Mormonized Moroni. His robes match perfectly Joseph's description. He has that great missionary haircut. He just looks like a 1980s Mormon to me in every way. And also, this statue was made out of fiberglass so that it was easily transported. So they started to add, it was at this time that they started to add an Angel Moroni to every temple. So every new temple got this Angel Moroni or a very similar one. And they actually added them onto almost all of the already existing temples as well. I think only the original 3 Utah temples didn't get a Moroni. And I've always wondered why. That's interesting. Maybe the people wanted to, in the local areas wanted to keep the Pioneer Temple intact, which is now all changing. But I would love to know if anyone from St. George or Manti or Logan knows why your temples didn't get a Moroni. I would love to know. So go ahead and let me know. But anyway, interestingly, although the exterior, so when we rebuilt the Nauvoo temple, we were still in this time of standardization. And so while the Nauvoo interior is completely different than the original. We'll get into that again in the next episode. But the exterior is supposed to be almost an exact replica. The main difference is that instead of the old-fashioned weather vane angel, it now had an Angel Moroni when it was rebuilt. And so similar to the new style, but with a little longer hair, but incredibly, after considering what we have in the first episode, I think, about the Nauvoo temple being torn down by fire and tornadoes and thunder and lightning, this new Nauvoo angel was struck by lightning in 2019 and had to be replaced. So you can see what happened to it. And I just find that to be fascinating. I don't want to read too much into it. Things happen. But that was interesting to me with the history of the Nauvoo temple. So anyway, I just loved seeing how this new icon developed. The angel that was originally just part of a trend that would have just come and gone with the styles of the time was rebirthed and eventually stuck and took on a great deal of significance. And you can see how many different styles we've had over these years. Most of them are some variation of that standardized 1980s Angel Moroni that have gone all over the world on all of our temples.